So before we start with the definitions, we need to understand, or you need to understand, what the continental margin is and how it looks like. Okay, so here's a little sketch of the continental margin. Okay. You all know what a coast is, or the coastline. That's the region where the sea surface intersects the land surface. All learned now that the average depth of the ocean is 4,000 meters. You learned about deep sea basins or so, but there is a transition zone between land and the deep sea, which is called the continental margin, and this is the structure of it. Because we normally have a region which is first shallower, typical depth less than 200 meters, which is called the continental shelf. Then we have a transition zone to the continental slope, where it goes into the deep ocean, and then comes the continental rise, and we end up in the deep basins. And the transition zone between the shelf and the slope is called the shelf break. So that's important to understand. It's not everywhere 200 meters, and I will show you examples later on. There are some regions where the shelf is deeper, okay, and there are some regions where the continental shelf is shallower. So the existence of the continental margin makes a big difference to the oceanography, to the currents, to dynamical features. Because you have a coast and you have relatively shallow water. Also, the feature that you have a shelf break makes a difference. Okay? And you'll learn more about that later on. For example, there was so-called shelf break fronts running along the shelf break. Also, western boundary currents tend to follow the shelf break. And that's fascinating.